Hello, you are watching the IN2G Show, and today we're going to be talking about a boxer ex-girlfriend that wants half of his money. They never got married, they never had kids, but she was with him for at least 3 years.
Hi, I'm Vanessa Pizzuto. I'm in IN2G, and today I'll be talking about sex education from a shame-free perspective.
Hi, my name's Asher McKenzie. I'm on the IN2G Show, and we're discussing that famous saying, I catch flights, not feelings.
Hi, I'm Yushani Burton on the IN2G Show, and today we're discussing what are you thinking and what are you doing now and the consequences of that later on in life.
Hi, I'm Cynthia. We are here at the IN2G Show, and I am super excited. Why? Because I've got these panelists that are going to talk about all these amazing, exciting things. So who are these panelists? Yes, who are they? Who are you?
I'm Vanessa Pizzuto. I'm a journalist,
Yes.
and I'm a writer, and I'm really happy to be with you. Thank you for the invitation, Cynthia.
Anytime, yes. Who are you?
I am Asher McKenzie.
Yes.
My day job is I fly commercial airliners and do some motivational speaking.
Wow, looking forward to talking to you. Right.
I'm Yushani Burton. I am a fitness and lifestyle coach. I help women over 45 look and feel amazing for their 50s and beyond.
Oh,
Love it.
that sounds great. Yeah, love it, love it. Right, so guys, who am I going to go? Right, Vanessa.
Right.
Let's go with you.
Okay.
What is your subject matter today that you want us to talk to her about? in
So
IN2G?
you said I could bring anything.
Yes.
So I want to talk about sexual education in a shame-free way.
Fantastic. That's
Yeah.
amazing. So when you say sexual education, let's explore that. What is it that you want to talk about?
So some time ago, I started reading about purity culture. I don't know if you heard about it. I wasn't very sure what it meant. Started reading books about it and realized that sometimes we're trying to do good things and we're trying to help young people to make good decisions. We do so in a way that actually harms them.
Right.
And so I kind of started reading, and then I got invited to go to Germany and share some of those ideas. And I was like, I'm really not an expert on this. I just read a few things about it, but I had the opportunity to share some of those thoughts, and I felt like there was a really great need for this kind of conversation.
Fantastic.
So, yeah.
Okay, so in regards to when you say that about the purity, what is the concept behind, for those that don't know what that is? What is the concept behind
Sure.
it?
So purity culture movement is not the same as having values. Okay, let me start with that.
Right.
I'm not against values. Now, in the 90s and 200s, 2000s, what? Wow!
I remember that far back.
Time travel. So in the 90s and 2000s, there was a movement that started in the States with books like I Kiss Dating Goodbye.
Oh yes, I remember that book.
Does it ring
Yes,
any bells?
I
In
remember
which,
that.
and the whole idea, the idea was good. The idea is we are going to empower young people to have amazing relationships and to have great sex when they get married. In the process, this movement, which became an industry really, started sharing some really challenging ideas like your value depends on your virginity, right? And they were using some illustrations that were super scary, like they will get a group of young people and they will say, okay, I'm chewing a piece of gum. Now I'm gonna pull it out of my mouth. How many of you would like it? Okay, this is how women are if they have sex before they get married. And imagine that, right? This is not only wrong, it's also nowadays, when I think about that teaching, I see it as a blasphemy because your value, Asha, is intrinsic. I want you to make good decisions, empower decisions, informed decisions, so you live a good life. But if tomorrow you make a decision that is wrong, God will love you exactly the same. Because his love is not dependent on your behavior. Yeah. God is not coming to you saying do this or don't do that because otherwise I cannot love you. God wants to empower you to feel good about yourself. Kind of like what you do, you know? And so when we tell young women and young men that their value depends on their behavior, we are filling their bodies and their minds with shame. And what happens when these young people get married is a lot of dysfunction, like a lot of dysfunction. So I had friends, they started getting married, and they will tell me some horror stories, Cynthia. They had done what the church told them to do, they had waited, and they got to the wedding night, and they experienced a lot of pain. You know? And they didn't have the information, the vocabulary to even talk to someone and to say, this is what is happening to me. In fact, there is now so many books on this. One of them is called The Great Sex Rescue. If you work with young people, I highly recommend it. The lady who wrote it went through all the books of that time and kind of started putting together what happens when you actually do these things. When you grow up, women were told, when I now think about that, I get so angry. Women were told that because your body belongs to your husband, the day that you get married, you don't get to choose. Right. And so maybe you're tired, maybe just not in the mood, whatever. And then on top of that, some women were told, oh, if you say no to your husband, you're not being a good Christian. If you say no to your husband, he's going to start watching porn. Imagine that. And it's your fault. You know, like you're being a bad woman. And then they started comparing and seeing the incidences of dysfunction and illnesses that came. And they were in line with those women that had been abused sexually. So 37% is the incidence of dysfunction and pain and suffering that takes place when a woman grew up being told she doesn't get to choose, right? This is the same, statistically the same as if you experience sexual abuse.
Wow. So guys, have you got any questions on that?
Yes, that's quite interesting actually, because I was looking at something just this week, maybe last week.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of things. So one was about, we tell the young people all the time, don't have sex before marriage. Almost like sex is wrong, forbidden, taboo, all of this kind of stuff. And just like you said, so when they get married, because it's not spoken about, it's either like they don't know what to do, or like I said, it's pain, or it doesn't really, it's not the paradise that they've been promised. Yeah. And about how are we actually helping people, or I say young people, but married, right? To actually move into a marriage relationship with everything that what sex should be, and recognizing what it is.
I want to say two things to that.
Of course, yes.
I want to start with the fact that we cannot promise anyone a great sex life because we don't know. So what the purity culture movement did is they had a big stick, a big gun loaded with shame, and it said to people, either you do this or boom, all this shame is yours. That was the stick. The carrot was saying, but if you are good, you are gonna get married and sex is going to be fabulous, right? And the truth is, that is prosperity gospel. That is emotional prosperity gospel. Guys, how many of us are actually super able to see prosperity gospel when a preacher stands up and says, if you believe in the Lord, you'll get money? You'll go like, no. But we do this on an emotional level when it comes to sex.
Right.
How damaging, unfair. And also imagine the young person who believed you. What's going to happen when they realize
That's not.
they lied to me on something
expectation.
super important? Can I now believe them? So that's the one thing I wanted to say. The second thing for me is super important, that sex education becomes commonplace, age appropriate, but absolutely commonplace. We teach young boys and young girls the real words for every part of their bodies. You know, we have proper sex education in schools, and to me, from a Christian perspective, shame-free sex education is based on three things. Of course, values, because you want young people to have a good life, right? Of course, I'm not against values. But the other two elements that were lacking so often and so sadly is one, respect for the free will and the dignity of every human being. So you approach that lovely person that you want to help, and you respect their free will, like God does, right? You go like, look, I'm going to give you information, I'm gonna tell you what I think, but at the end of the day, the decision is still yours, and I'm not going to withhold love, I'm not going to withhold acceptance, I'm not gonna kick you out emotionally if you happen to believe a different thing.
I think that's key. And just generally how we are as humans anyway, because if you think about it, if we do have that knowledge that just to respect everyone, that everyone has a choice, we can't actually make somebody do something that they don't want to do. As much as we want them to do it, it's up to them, it's their choice whether they do it or not. But we kind of have this culture of control, and it's something where it's like, you know, particularly in the young people that I see and speak to a lot of young girls as well, who are like, sometimes they feel like they have no choice, that they don't have any control over what they do. And that's down to, no disrespect, but that's down to some of the boys that they have to deal with and their trauma really, and how that plays out, and then they just sort of assume that
They don't
whatever
have
they
a
say,
say. And this is, sorry, can I?
Go
you
for it,
jump
go for it,
on
go for it.
I really want to hear what you want to say, but I want to talk about disembodiment. Embodiment is a beautiful field. We don't have time for that, but I do want to say, when you grow up as a woman, being told that your body is a stumbling block and that you are responsible for the thoughts and actions of other people, which is not true. Every person is responsible. We all live with respect and kindness and dignity, whether we're boys, whether we're girls, we all need to live in respect, kindness and dignity. But at the end of the day, you're responsible for your thoughts and actions, and I'm responsible for mine. Now, if I grow up being told that my body is such a stumbling block that men cannot control themselves, how comfortable am I going to feel in my own body? And then I say I do, and magically, hello, I'm gonna be so ready for this. I'm gonna go, come puppy, I'm ready. You know, like I want you to think about that. And it connects to what you said, because the body not only expresses when you like and dislike something, and your capacity and your voice to say, I'm not comfortable, I don't want this. Also your voice to say, I want this, in the right context and right relationship. What happens when you were told to push all down and you were never given a chance to connect with your body? Now I want to hear your thoughts. You were about to say something.
Yes, Asha, definitely. I want to hear what you have to say.
Now I have a completely different question.
Go for it.
Let's hear this.
I think from just a practical standpoint, I think my question would be, whose responsibility is it to educate our young people? Because when we look at sexual education, we speak about, you know, school settings and what happens in PSHE, but the real conversations that need to take place, where do they take place, and who are the people that should address these things, and how should we approach it?
That's a great question.
I think for me, sorry, I think for me, it's really about everything starts with the family, I think. But I think there is responsibility with the family, but also responsibility with the community. So if you're in a church and a Christian community, I think there is a partnership that should take place so that everybody gets that. They get the information they need to, because sometimes children might be with their parents, they don't really want to talk about that sort of thing. It's like, it's a bit embarrassed, like, Mum, don't talk to me about that. Ugh. Do you know what I mean? But it's about really having that space. And also, it's about being conscious of that. We need to have those discussions. Because I think sometimes in the church community, like Vanessa mentioned, we don't put that into part of our consideration. When you think about a conference for the youth, that is not something that you think, okay, as part of the lineup, you know, I'm going to put this as a subject or a place they can go for workshop, but it needs to be at the forefront, and it's an intentional thing that should be listed and to be actually planned upon, and to bring about the right people, amiable people, and not people going to make them feel uncomfortable, and also have counsellors there. I think having a conference for youth is important to have the counsellors that deal with trauma, counsellors that deal with any kind of things, so that they are part of the whole ecosystem of a conference. With that, I think that will make the difference, because it would even tackle things. And I dare say, LGBTQ questions that may come about when it comes to sexual education, that maybe some young people in the church are maybe having thoughts about or going through. But if you have somebody that they can connect and talk to, then you're getting to the root of what is happening, and you're able to help and support them through it. Does that make sense? Because it's one thing to have a preacher preaching about something, but once that preacher's done and they are left with all these thoughts, all these questions that they may not be able to have that connection, have those questions answered. And also it's quite embarrassing as well. You know, sometimes people don't want the youth or anybody, like you said, unmarried, may not want to come up there and be like, oh, I need help, or they might just want that. I love the concept of having a safe space, a place where it's a safe space where people can go to and have a conversation, and it allows them, and they can go any time, and it's part of the conference, and nobody is judged or anything like that. And it might even be somewhere that it's the way that it's designed is private, so you don't know who's inside there, and it's just giving them that dignity is key, I think.
I want to say two more things. I think your question is fantastic. I will change the word. Instead of responsibility, I would say whose privilege is to teach this, whose honor is to share this kind of information. Because when we abdicate that privilege and that honor, then young people get their education and quote unquote from porn and from other sources that are not prepared for that.
Yes.
Also, I want to go back to something you said. This interest in me started because I was at a camporee where two amazing ladies were invited to have this kind of conversation. And the sex conference, the place where they invited me and some other people, was church, you know, actually realizing the need for this and bringing people together. So I said two legs. One is obviously values, the other is respect for dignity and free will. And the third one, and it has to do with what you said, is the education needs to be scientific and trauma-informed.
Yes.
Yeah.
The education needs to be scientific and trauma-informed. And sex education, it needs to happen, obviously, first and foremost at home. But even if you don't have children, I don't. I think we need to start teaching ourselves and relearning the things that we didn't learn properly. So when a young person comes and talks to me, we can speak to them from a place of healing, from a place of spiritual and emotional abundance, and from a place of, you know what, it is my honor and my absolute privilege to share this with you.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I think that, it's all well and good. I think, to say, it needs to start at home. But then if you think about it, even in the church, there's people who come to church, young people who come to church, and they're the only person in their their family that do come. Some are coming from, every family's dysfunctional, but where maybe their parents are not in that place to be able to tell them anything. So I like what you said about just having a space where they can come. And you know, we have Cornerstone, right? But if we have like a youth Cornerstone, right? Yes. So there is that place that they can have a discussion. And I think it's also important because this doesn't start when they're teens. It starts before that. That's right. And it starts with relationship. Yes. And so every one of us has a
responsibility.
Right?
Privilege, actually,
to, you know, to build relationships with the young people at our church, with the children at our church, spend time talking to them. Because you're right, sometimes going to your parents is just like, do I have to talk about this?
Yes.
So, but if you have that auntie or that uncle that you can talk to because they've always been there for you throughout your whole life, ever since you can remember, then that is something that I think we all have that responsibility to do that with. I mean, if you're not good with kids, then just don't. But you know, and I think it's not just ideally your parents, but I think that as a church, as a village, that I think we have a responsibility to even build those relationships with young people.
But I also think there's an extension. I think it's fine to look at the youth and say, yeah, we're going to support them in this way. But I think it's people that are married, people that are not classified as the conventional youth or young person, people that are maybe in relationships but they need a sort of a bespoke support in that way. Not like you must not do this and not do that. It's more about that whatever stage or season they are in their life, they get that support. So they get married, they get that support at that season. They've been married for 10, 15 years, they get support. Because it's sex education is something that's lifelong. It's a lifelong education. And so I think that it should be created in that way when it comes to the Christian village, that it's lifelong and it's not just put in, okay, the youth have got this, so, everybody else is not doing it. We're all very,
And also, in the same way that we train pastors and we train teachers and we have scholarships for pastors and we have scholarships for teachers, maybe we need to write letters to our leaders in the church and go, you know what, I will absolutely love if we had a scholarship for a Christian sexologist. I would really, why not?
That would be incredible.
What if we just get a bit more proactive and with respect and kindness, always write to our leaders and say, we need more of this. And we are willing to take an offering in our church and put that money towards that. Can you match whatever we raise? Because we need, Christian sex educators that can give good advice, solid advice to our young people and our people of all ages.
Of course. Thank you so much, Vanessa. Right. So, Asha, you're on the hot seat now.
It's quite interesting, actually, that you said that. So in a way it does. So I know you mentioned that we can look for a quote as well. And I didn't actually look for the quotes. The quote found me.
That's what I like to hear.
And I was with a group of young people yesterday. And in the midst of the discussion, this guy, he stood up and he said, I catch flights, not feelings. And it did make me stop, because I've heard the quote flying around before, and people use it quite loosely and don't think about what they're actually saying. And I wanted to try and find the origin of the quote, and I couldn't find the original source of the quote, but I was trying to understand the various interpretations of what it means. And essentially, it is this train of thought whereby instead of investing time and effort into building emotional stability in the sense of a relationship, in the sense of, and that can be a family relationship or friendship or a kind of romantic relationship, I am going to park that all to one side and just spend my money on enjoyment and entertainment at that point in time. And for a lot of us as young people, it might make sense in that moment. But what are the consequences later on down the line? And how does that impact upon our relationships and our sexual relationships also further on down the line? And that was my quote of my thinking process.
Eugenie, let's hear you.
So, and this is a problem. It's kind of linked to what I was going to talk about. But what we need to understand is that we need to be in touch with our feelings, right? From a child. And in that, from a child, because we're taught how to feel from our parents, right? Oh, did little Johnny hurt your feelings? And that's complete nonsense. Johnny can't hurt your feelings. You're controlling, like you said, you're in control of your feelings. So we need to learn how to, what our feelings feel like, right? And we need to learn how to change our feelings, because you can talk about, I'm just going to do this and do that and whatever, but each one of those things, there's an emotion connected to that. So you can't actually do one thing without, your feelings are always there. You can't do one thing without some sort of emotion, and there's a whole range of emotions. So to me, it's complete nonsense, right? And it's also sad, because you're gonna try and just not feel anything, and you're gonna find yourself in a place where maybe you're lonely, maybe you're wondering, what went wrong? Why can't I maintain a relationship? And it's all because I mean, look, we have to have that emotional intelligence. If we don't have that, then, you know, we're just shooting blank.
So, you know, I like to fire questions away, and I tried to dig a bit deeper with the individuals in the group, and, you know, people were not as open to it. But one thing that did come out is a lot of the time, we don't start off from this point. And, you know, we don't just adopt this attitude from the beginning. For most people, although they present that front, it is a trauma response. Something has happened previously that has now caused me to shut down. And because I haven't had the safe spaces, I don't have those individuals that I can speak to, I've internalized these emotions. And I'm saying, I am not letting anybody have this impact. I'm not going to be hurt like this again. So I'm going to close off from everyone, have the enjoyment for this short period of time. And at that point in life where I'm thinking, I am a bit lonely, I am ready to open up again.
No one's around.
No one's around. I don't feel as good in myself as I may have done once done before. The people in my age group may all be partnered up and I'm not. And then now there's a comparison and it opens up a whole can of worms.
Because it comes about, what would happen is that jealousy would then come into play. It will come about where, and I was thinking about, you know, trauma is probably a trauma response. But I think that what happens with these sort of things is that it's a way of protecting themselves. Like it's trying to protect yourself. Say, I don't want to get hurt, and I don't, like you said, I don't want to get hurt, and I'm not going to let nobody in. But it's becoming such a common thing with the youth and people saying, I'm not going to get hurt. But as a community of Christians, do we have an answer for that? Because we do talk a lot about, actually I'm going to put this to you, we do talk a lot about forgiveness.
Yes.
Right? And the first thing that came into my mind was maybe forgiveness is a tool. But I don't think that the way that we as a community, as Christians, talk about forgiveness is either realistic or practical, or how would you then support somebody that has those feelings? How do they get over that trauma? How do they go about fixing those things? Because it's, like you said, it's come about because they've gone through something.
That's a big one.
Wow. I heard you take a deep breath in. I was like, well, do you want to take that now? I think one of the biggest challenges that we have is having those conversations in the first place. And you find that a lot of people haven't processed what has taken place. And if you have individuals around you that only know snippets of the story, or they just know elements of what happened in the aftermath, they will pump some toxic, they will just be fueling all of those negative emotions, and you never have a chance to really unpack and process what has happened. Because especially in a relationship setting, there's always multiple elements, there's always two sides to the story. And I always believe, and I always say to people, that there's no experience that you go through in vain. And every experience you go through, there's things that you have to learn from it. But the only way you can learn from that experience is to actually reflect upon what has happened. Let's let the emotions settle. I'm not saying do it straight away, but let's unpack it, let's process what's happened, and then forgiveness becomes a lot easier. And the way we teach forgiveness sometimes is like just this blind forgiveness, you know? No matter how I feel, no matter what, no matter how hurt I am, even though I've never had a discussion about it, even though I'm carrying this baggage and this trauma, I'm just gonna forgive you and move on with my life. And it doesn't work like that, because I've said I've forgiven you, but when I see your picture come up on my feed, there's fire burning in my heart. I've blocked all of your numbers, and now you've emailed me, and I'm throwing my phone at the wall because I've said the words that I've forgiven you, but I haven't actually forgiven you. And even when people are in the wrong, and something I have learned over life is there are people that have done some awful things and they are in the wrong. And sometimes you almost feel like in forgiving them, I am justifying or condoning their behavior.
Saying something to
I mean, well, go for it. No, go for it.
listen. I want to hear you.
It's a very short comment.
No,
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying, and I think some of the things you're saying kind of echo what you were talking about. And I don't think forgiveness is the same as not having boundaries.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because there's a reason why you say forgive and forget, right? But then, if true forgiveness is not like when you're going to look at them and be like, so that's not forgiveness then, right? Because forgiveness is not about them; it's about you. It's about it's about freeing ourselves from that pain, right? And I mean, how I did it one time was I just got a list of all the people throughout my whole life that I could think of that I need to forgive, and I went into each person and I kind of analysed it, because sometimes we think that people are just plain evil, and sometimes they're not, right? And so it's like, okay, so what was my responsibility in this situation? Did they really do that in terms of, were they really that malicious? Could it have been this? Could it have been that? And worked it out. And then eventually you kind of like, actually, yeah, I mean, I could have done this. I could have said this, but I didn't. And then eventually all of that bitterness just kind of dissipates, because it's like, yeah, okay, I was responsible for some of that as well. And so it becomes easier to forgive them. You can't forgive somebody if you still think, So I think that, hold your horses, I think that it is about the process of forgiveness, which is really, really important. And then it does eventually free you, and you have to ask God to help you with it as well. So that way you can actually forgive and move on. And forget.
But I think, Eugenia, I think you said something really important. I think about taking responsibility and accountability, because those are things that when we're going through stuff like that, we don't want to take responsibility, because you create, we create a story basically where the hero of the story and that person's the villain, and that's some of the things that we do, and it's human nature. But like you said, having that list and saying, what was my part?
Yes.
In that whole story. If it was a film that was put on Netflix, what was my part? What is my character in that story? Would I even perceive myself as somebody who was the sort of innocent person? Or is it something that actually people be like, look at me sideways like, I don't think so, do you know what I mean? So it's about that kind of, taking that sort of view allows you. And also another thing that I'm going to add is, forgiveness for me is different from restoration, and it feeds onto your value. And I was going to speak to you about that. Vanessa, talk to me about that.
Well, I just wanted to say, especially from the point of view of abuse, right? We have to always have the disclaimer, because sometimes you are fully innocent, especially if you were a child. And we always need to say, look, forgiveness is not the same as you being friend with that person. And sometimes the safest, healthiest, best thing you can do is forgive that person and keep them away from your life.
100%.
That's all I want to say.
100%, and I get that, and that's what I mean by restoration. Touching, because restoring somebody into your sort of, I say your orbit. You're like your own planet, and you've got an orbit. How does that affect you? Is it something that's healthy for you? If it's abuse, you don't want that person to be around you. Or if you're a parent to that child, you don't want that person around you. Sorry, you're going to say, Asha.
The only thing that I think, echoing most of what's been said, but I think it's important to separate the two, because especially from a lot of the young people I speak to, the way they view removing someone from their orbit is to not even address or think about what has taken place. And you can remove someone from your orbit and put healthy boundaries in place between you and that person, but you still need to address what has that trauma that has occurred, because those things will manifest later in life and in other ways. And that's the only thing I wanted to add to what you're saying, because I've had the conversation, the same conversations with people, and their interpretation is, my way of cutting this person out is to just block out every possible thing that's happened, and they pretend that I had never encountered this person, the trauma never took place, and I'm going to be fine now, and that's how I'm going to heal, and that's how I'm going to forgive. And that's not actually accurate.
It is.
It's not
And also fitness is not always taken over, it doesn't happen overnight. It can take sometimes years. That's another thing that add to your, and I think acknowledgement of this is what's happened and working through that process. And it could be that you need to go counselling as well. That's something that people don't always think that, oh, I've got to go to counselling to get to that place within our community. But you may need to go to counselling, you may need to go to a professional, and you may need to go to, you know, it might be that you may never talk to that person again in that way, but you need to go and find that safe place, that place that you can, like you said, get it out, examine it. You know, if there's a place where you should be taking responsibility, like you said, take responsibility and just grow from it. You know, there's lessons to be learned in all situations. So, Eugenie, now, what's your story? Let's hear your
it's
story.
interesting actually, because while I'm sitting here, I've had to change it. I'm still thinking what it is. Because it's just interesting, some of the stories that I've read and watched on social media, and there's one for you. Had to move that out. There's one, but there's one which I want to try and talk about, and it's just basically about our actions and what we do now and how that impacts our future. So I saw this video, and it was somebody just talking about men in particular, and how how they are with their children, how they are with their wife, and whether it's infidelity, whether it's just having kids everywhere, families everywhere, and their behaviour. And they find that now these kids with their fathers, or their fathers, are just lonely. They are full of regret. They don't have any kind of relationship with their children because they treated their mother so badly, and they're just old, dying, and have nothing. And so what I wanted to say is, how are we living our lives now, and are we actually thinking about what's going to happen in the future?
Very good question. I think that's a very good question, because I think that people don't really think about it. Because when you are in that place, you think you're going to be like that forever. You're going to be healthy. You're going to be able to walk. You're going to be able to talk and do all those things. Your memory is going to be intact. Everything. So you don't realise that actually you might get older, and actually those things that are privilege, your health, your mind, your being able to remember and people to care about you, is not actually in the place. And I think what happens that a lot of people don't realise until they get there, rather than actually thinking about, they're thinking of the present, like, I'm in it now, I'm going to do what I want to do. And there's an element of, like, I think, lack of self-awareness and also selfishness. Selfishness is one of the biggest things, where people are very selfish. But the thing that gets to me, Eugenie, is that I wouldn't have an issue if you do all that and then you get to that point and then you reap what you sow, basically, and you just pucker up and say, this is what I did and this is the result. My issue is when you get there and you're upset and you're whining about it.
And you're like,
and you're like, well, why are my kids not coming to see me? Why are they not calling me? Well, that's where I have the issue with. It's like, it's almost like, have you got some form of, like, you don't remember what you did? That's where my issue is. Like, if you're going to do that and you're going to get to that point, stand up, be strong. Like, this is what,
these are my choices.
This is my choices, and I did it, and I'm here. And if you do that accountability, it might even help you to go back and mend those things. But the lack of not acceptance of what, and awareness of, I've done something wrong, then stops you, because then you're back to that selfishness. Like, but why are they not coming to me? And it's all about, what about me? What about me? What about? That's right. And I think that then becomes also a barrier, because the lesson that they were supposed to learn has not been found. They haven't learnt it. So that lesson now has gone to a place where you're now being forced to learn it, but they still sometimes don't.
I'm just thinking about emotional intelligence, which is what you were talking about, and what you said. And I'm thinking, sometimes if I have to make a decision and I'm not entirely sure, someone taught me to do this exercise. It's called play the movie until the end. So basically, you picture yourself making the same kind of choices and you watch the movie until the end. And if there is no divine intervention, how are these choices going to carry me? Where are they going to lead me? If you like the end of the movie, if you hate the end of the movie, make a U-turn, because you're not gonna like it. And so, we have to be aware that we have, to some degree, there are things we cannot choose, but the things we can choose will make a difference, will have an impact in our lives.
100%. I love that. Actually, that's a really good practical way of looking at it and actually working it through. I mean, how many people have that time to let's take that step back and think about that. But if you did see yourself in a movie and saw yourself, would you respect yourself and your decision making and your choices?
That's really good.
It's true.
Do you know what I mean? Would you have that self-dignity and the actual, the power to say, well, why are you treating me like that? I'm your mum or I'm your dad. Why are you not connecting with me? And I would say to you, it's not just men. It's also
women.
It's women as well that are also making decisions that are getting them into a place where they're not. There's a sort of a detachment, a generational detachment issue, and with that they don't understand why there's a detachment, because their attitudes sometimes can be, but I did all this for you. The things that I did was not for me, was for you. But then it goes back to that self-awareness, that movie. If I carry on like this, how is this going to end up? I mean, what's your thoughts, Asha, on this?
Well, I mean, I think there's another person in this equation. And in the example that you gave, looking at the child, this is how a pattern of generational behavior and curses develop. Because if I am the child in this situation, I have a choice. There are some people that they take it and they say, I know how I felt when my parents treated me this way, and I'm going to be so intentional that I'm not going to allow my children to experience the same thing. Then others, they just repeat the behavior. And when you look at that individual that was doing it, you look at maybe their parent and what they experienced, and sometimes you can, and if we're not careful and we don't have that awareness and we don't actually reflect upon our actions of the past and learn the lessons, then it's just going to continue. And I think awareness is a very key thing, and having people around you. Sometimes you need accountability partners. Sometimes, because we put a lot of responsibility on ourselves to keep ourselves accountable, but sometimes you need other people around you who are able to point things out to you, and instead of becoming defensive, I can actually reflect and say, okay, what things can I put in place to try and change these behaviors? And again, touching on the trauma responses, can I have conversations about where this stems from? Why do I behave the way I do? Because I loved your analogy about making decisions, but in a lot of scenarios, it's not a conscious decision. We don't even have the time to think about it. It's just something within us that we're just that's just how. And you say, oh, that's just how I am. I've always been like this. But why have you always been like this? And what can we address to try and change that moving forward? Because if I don't like the end of the story, I have to change something.
But also the other thing as well that some people end up going through is they go through it and they say, I'm never going to do that because I went through and I know how it felt. And then they get humbled because then they start doing it because, it's like the one thing that they did not want to become or behave like, they become that. But that goes back to actually unpacking and saying, why am I feeling the way that I'm feeling? What did I go through? And if you unpack it, then it kind of helps you to manage it better.
Yeah, because you have to. It's all right to say, I'm not going to do that, but it's already, like you said, it's within you. But you have to then take action. It's no point just sort of saying, I'm not going to be like that. And we have to change those neural pathways in our brain. And so it's going to be uncomfortable, but we have to. I'm sure there's something in the Bible, and I don't know what the verse is, but maybe you might know, where it is, we need to check ourselves every day, check ourselves and check ourselves if we are being Christ-like, right? We need to have that mind that is also in Christ Jesus. And without that, and without having that benchmark, then we're going to be doing all kinds of things, right? So I think it's important, yes, to be accountable, yes, to have somebody else to hold you accountable, but also we need to look at ourselves every day and think, did I do the right thing today? What did I do today, right? And then, okay, so this is what I'm going to do tomorrow. But you've got to change those neuro pathways and start let me just explain, just in case somebody's listening that doesn't know what we're talking about. So basically, say we have a motorway, right? The motorway is built, concrete, tarmac, and everyone just goes down this motorway. And sometimes that's the path of our life. We just go in and that's it, right? This it could be the generational, say curse, but you know, what our parents did, we're just going down that road. But we know that, or something comes along, it's like, this is not the right road that we need to be on. So we have to get a new pathway. And that means we have to go in the bush and we have to start going down that path. And with a machete, we have to kind of keep going, and it's rough and it's rough. But the more that we do it, the smoother that road is going to become. And then when we look back, that motorway is all got all weeds and everything all on it, and you're not going to want to go down that road anymore, because this road is now clear. And that's what happens in our brain. So the way that we are used to thinking, we need to actively do something to change the way that we think, and we need to, as painful as it can be, we need to continue to do that, and it just becomes like a habit. It's just what we do eventually.
Fantastic. Right, so my subject matter, guys, is there's a boxer called Israel Adingo, and he basically was dating a woman for about, I think, 5 years, and he broke up with her. He lives in New Zealand with her, and she's now taken him to court in New Zealand to get half of his money, because she said, I was with you for 3 years, 3 or plus years, and we never got married. Yes, we never had no kids, but I helped you. I was, cooking, cleaning, being a wife essentially to you, and now you're even more successful than when I met you, so I should have half of your actual money. What are your thoughts? And the law in New Zealand, mind you, the law in New Zealand says that if you are in you're married, civil partnership, or you've lived with somebody or been with someone for like 3 years, you can apply to get half of their actual earnings.
I saw that heading. I didn't read it, but I was thinking, touch. and so, but there's the law. That's why she's doing it.
Yeah. So, he put on his Instagram his new girlfriend, and I think that kind of sparked her off a bit.
Okay.
That's what my view is personally. But I think because she didn't do it before, but she did. They were together for a while, and she felt that I really did support him, so like I should get half of it. So what's your thoughts? Should you be actually in a relationship for that long? Do you think she's right for going for half of his because she did, cook, clean, look after him, do all the wifely stuff, but without the ring, of course. Yeah. Actually, you're smiling like that. Let's hear.
As you were painting the description, I could just see Medea in my head. Like, that's $200 for the cooking. I'm outnumbered on him. I have to be careful.
I want to hear you from a man's perspective.
So
how do you?
I do not agree that she should, and I don't really think she has the right to, even though it is in law.
Why?
And there's something that doesn't sit well with me, and I have this discussion with a lot of my female friends, and I think it happens far more with females than with men. Mm-hmm. And as a woman, I think naturally women are very nurturing, and you invest a lot into those relationships and those men. And you get to a point when this person is not suitable for me. I should not be with them. But because of how much I've invested, I can't leave.
What, the stocks are too high?
Because, someone else is going to reap the benefits of what I've invested, or, I'm going to have to start again from scratch, rebuilding bit by bit. And I don't think that's the correct or healthy mindset to have.
Absolutely.
And as a woman, with a nurturing spirit, in a relationship with a person you love, you should do these things out of love.
Yeah.
It should be reciprocal. I'm not saying that it's a one-sided thing, but you can't then turn around and say, because I was courting or I was building something with you, we didn't progress any further than this illegally. There's no
or even kids.
Entitlement. There's no children. You didn't make a decision to try and build something, a safety net for yourself. You just went all into this one individual. Now it hasn't worked. I'm trying to be very careful in what I say, because I don't want to be I don't want to be egged from a distance.
No, actually, I don't want. What I want you to do is be really honest about it. From a man's perspective, I mean, how would you feel in your role if you was dating a woman for about 3 years, and then she said there was a way, I mean, it's not guaranteed, it's just a way that she could claim that I want half of whatever you got.
In my honest opinion, so I get in trouble for this anyway. I try to maintain, that's not the right word. I like to be cordial and respectful with anyone that I've had any sort of interaction with. If you're dating someone, even if it doesn't work out, it doesn't need to be a really toxic environment. However, if you try to threaten me in that sense, I will make it my duty that you don't get anything. Because I say, why would you do that? Because in my opinion, I'm thinking, as much as we're not friends, you can have a conversation with me. If it's a case of, do you know what, you have been in my house, you don't have anywhere to go right now. I mean, he's a boxer. I'm guessing he has quite a bit. Well, even if we allocate a section, we set a time that, okay, let me support you in finding somewhere else. Or let's give a time frame whereby you can stay here while you search for another place. There's so many things that could be agreed just by having a conversation. And I don't know the details, but in my mind, I can see it. You have not attempted to contact him. You have not tried to find like a reasonable solution. You're just in your feelings because you've seen him move on somewhere else and you invested this time, and now you regret not investing for yourself and not developing yourself. And I always encourage my friends and my circles that you must not allow one person to have this much power and authority over you. Do not shut down your life because you are in love with this person. You should be able to grow together. You should be pouring into and developing each other. You should not be in a situation where after 3 years you have nothing to stand on for this man.
That's a very good point. But I think she hasn't. I think she's still got something. But I think she feels that she wants half, because she felt that she's invested quite a bit into him, and so she's like, I want half of what he's worth, and he's worth quite a couple of mil. So half is, quite a bit of money.
Would you want the same if he wasn't so successful?
That's the question, you see? So you think, if he wasn't successful, maybe not. Maybe that wouldn't be an issue. I mean, Vanessa, what's your thoughts on that?
I have no idea of this story, so I feel very apprehensive. Being a journalist, since I haven't read it, I feel very apprehensive because every story has more than one side.
Sure.
So I'm not going to talk about the story because I have no idea. However, something you said, I thought, that's super interesting. Wow. And so you were talking about not putting your life on hold. And when you are single, particularly if you are a young lady at church, often the language and the way things are expressed are exactly in that line, kind of like have this sleeping beauty attitude, just pray and wait, and the Lord will come and send the man that will rescue you from your meaningless existence. And so, what I feel is really important of what you just said is that we realize that life, with all the good, the bad, the pretty and the ugly, is an amazing journey. And whether you are married or not, whether you had kids or not, you have talents. And those talents, please don't bury them. Even if you really want to be in a relationship, and I know loneliness is really hard, so I'm not by any means underplaying the pain of anyone. But from the choices that you have, empower yourself to live your best possible life.
Right. But don't you think, I mean, what is your thoughts, guys, about being with somebody? I'm going to say this, and I'm going to throw it out there. I do think that a man and a woman, they know when they're with somebody where they want to be married to that person or not, right? Why is it, would you say that she would have known that wasn't going to go down that path, and then she just carried on and had that hopeful mindset? And then it didn't really work out that way? Or should she just cut and run after? What would be an acceptable time for a couple together that says they're together and we're not going down talking about that. What is acceptable? What is the reasonable
want to
time?
say something.
What is the reasonable time in a Christendom?
Okay.
Or in your like,
All right.
what's happening? What is the
Let me
reason?
let me just say this. I was on a Zoom the other day, right? Only for young people. But they were talking about should a woman propose to a man, right? And then ultimately it was like, we went back to the Bible and it was like, no, God's got this sorted, right? But
Wait a minute. What about Ruth?
yeah, but that was a bit different.
It's sure.
Yeah, it's different. I mean,
Sure
and I think how they did things in Bible times is completely different.
Sorry.
So then,
We'll go back to that.
Yeah,
We'll go back to that.
so-
We'll go back to that.
So what they're saying is like, because somebody's saying, well, I've been with my partner for like 9 years, and men get really, got a lot to think about. So I'm gonna propose because then that is gonna release the pressure from them. And we're like, hold on, men know. They know. They could know from, you could be in a relationship with, a man could be in a relationship. Tell me if I'm wrong. For like
A week.
well, they could be in a relationship for 3 years,
Yeah.
right? And they just break it off. It's not working. And then the next relationship, 3 months,
They're married.
and it's great.
It's good.
And, yeah,
They're gone.
A man knows if that's the one or not. So if you are with somebody for, I don't know, say 3 years, and he hasn't proposed to you yet, he's not thinking about it. Forget it. Move on. So, and really, again, I know you're saying about the woman's responsibility, but it's also the man's responsibility. Once they know, no, this isn't it. Need to go. I haven't finished yet. Need to go.
I'm just, I'm like, whoa.
Pressure.
Because
Depends, my man. Like,
you need to be like honest with her, because you're going to save her heartache. And the last thing I want to say is wifely things for wife. That's it. So why are you cooking for him? Why are you doing his washing and his laundry? It's like, that's for wife. That's wifely duties. Leave that until you are a wife.
Can we have a bit of clarity? Just a really short bit of clarity on what are wifely duties? Those what would you say not to do in terms of wifely duties?
So, let me ask you this, right?
Shouldn't have asked the question like that.
What would you expect a woman to do for you?
As a girlfriend,
Yeah.
that is reasonable for you.
For this, that's why I asked you the question.
You don't know?
I asked you the question because you said,
Wifely.
wifey things, wifey duties for when you're
A wife.
wifey. The challenge you have is we live in a time and an age where many of the wifey duties, or I don't say the traditional wifey duties, because I don't necessarily comfort, but the traditional wifely duties, a lot of young women do not contain those things and are not capable of doing those things. And if
Can't even do those things.
if we're being honest, like we live in a society
true.
that as a young man, you cannot make an assumption that this person is able to do any of it.
You're 100%.
that's true.
You're 100% because when I went to sauna, there was a guy that was there like, oh, you can't, you meet women that can't even make a sandwich. That's what he's saying, and I was like, what? You can't make a sandwich?
Yeah.
No,
what it's
it's common,
really?
and that's why I say for you to say wifey things for wife, it's a bit of a risk. There's a limit. I would never expect anyone to go through my laundry and start doing, but I think you do have to demonstrate some of those skills in that dating process,
Right.
because the assumption from my part sometimes is you're not capable of doing this.
Right.
Yeah, so for you to know that they can't do it.
Yeah,
I
and also
get
for you to make it, is it to understand or to make a decision whether they're going to be your wife? Is that why you need that data?
Do you know what it is?
Wife,
It's there's so many variables that goes into that decision, and even if you demonstrate all of these wifey qualities in that sense, practical qualities, it still doesn't make you. It doesn't mean that you have a free pass. my grandma always said, a woman can only maintain a front for 2 years. Because people can pretend to be something. They can find out what are all of the boxes he wants to tick, and they will pretend to. And you know what? It has been very accurate so far in life. But my friends have said to me exactly what you're saying, is that they see it. They're like, Ashley, we know exactly what you're going to do. All of this 2-year stuff and all these rules, and you're going to end up engaged in like 6 months. Because I agree with you. Yeah. You know. And you know, you can call it spiritual discernment. Oh. I don't know why it's more prevalent among men than women.
It's because that's the simple answer. Because, you know, the Bible says that when a man findeth a wife, he finds the good thing. So it's God's given men that ability for them to find a wife. Does that make sense?
No, I get it. There is a part of it, I think, but I think there's something about. I mean, Ash, I'll let you talk because you're
the only reason our child is spiritual discernment doesn't discriminate against gender.
Yeah.
And just because the man might feel that he has found a good thing for him doesn't mean he is necessarily a good thing for you.
Yes. I mean, 100% right. If a man comes and says, God told me you're my wife, that means nothing unless God tells her.
Thank you very much. We'll talk.
So yeah, I agree.
Can I go back to something you said? Because I found that super interesting. You said that a man knows, and I think that's true, but I also think a woman knows. I think you know if this guy is committed or not. You know if this guy is fully, you know, after a certain time. We all can go through processes in which we don't know, but after a certain time, and I think whether you're a woman or a man, please don't lie to yourself.
That's it.
Yeah.
Ash, you gonna say something there?
I agree that after a period of time, you do get to a place where you know. I think the challenge you have as well is that people are constantly adapting and growing, and there are some things that you cannot always predict, and some aspects of people's lives that you're not quite prepared for.
True.
You know, so sometimes you get to this point where you feel like you're ready and you feel like you know based on what you've been presented with, and then you just have a curveball. And
I meant it more like sometimes you know this is not the person.
But
and you carry on in spite of that inner knowledge that this is not the right person for you.
And with many of the conversations of this exact thing, and I find that's why I was making the point of the differentiation between men and women, is that I find that with a lot of my female friends, even when they get to the place when they know, I think it's far more of it's a bit more transactional than with. It's very much a case of, I need these particular things, and I have invested these particular things, and I'm willing to look past these. Because some people fool themselves and think, you know, he may change in a certain space. But others, they know what they're saying. But they're like, when I'm weighing up these pros and cons, I've done my calculation, and I can work with this, and I'll put up with this because I can get this from it. Whereas guys are a little bit more. When you feel it, you know, you're not even willing to, I don't even know why you stay for longer. I don't know. I don't know why you stay. But ultimately,
I think that we as women, we have a responsibility for the younger women to kind of say to them, listen, for their own well-being, mental well-being. Once you know that this is not for you, you need to leave. You don't need a man. You actually can stand up on your own 2 feet, and be quite strong with that. You don't need to stay. And again, I think it comes down to self-esteem. It comes down to their own self-confidence. And because the only way that you stay, unless you're being controlled, is because you don't feel like you will get anyone else, or this is the best thing that you can get.
And can I go full circle? I'll be short, because we've been talking for a while, but I just also think it also has to do with education and being present, comfortable, and trusting your body, because maybe that gut feeling that you know you could trust, when you grew up being told that your body cannot be trusted, maybe you dismiss it.
That's true.
And also, I think sometimes it's not about the fact that you need a man. Sometimes people just want to be in a relationship and be with somebody. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's people who don't have a problem just being with somebody and working it through. But at the same time, I think, like we said before, if you know and you don't lie to yourself, don't deny it, go through the process and do what you need to do. But then you get entangled, don't you? People get emotionally, there's catch feelings, they don't, it's the opposite. They catch feelings, not flights. And so then it's difficult to kind of detach themselves. But I would say to you, like your grandma said, I think there is definitely a season or a time that you can see whether this, and be kind to each other and just be honest. I can't do it. Honestly, just it's not going. This is not where I want to go to, and just keep it moving. Sorry,
but this is the problem as well, right? It's because it's media, it's social media, it's what people see, right? And it's, you know, it's how you look at a situation. For example, if you're in a relationship, you break up, you get back together, break up, get back together, break up, get back together. That is not working, move on. But when you're in it, you could be thinking, look, we keep getting back together. It must mean that we should be together. But it's about who's around you, and maybe we, older folks, right? It's like, we need to be educating these younger ones about relationships, certain things and the signs and the things that guys say, no disrespect, that it's like, no, don't accept that.
This is a red flag. This is
a red flag. That's a red flag.
Gaslighting.
Yeah, but I have to say though, and I have to chip in there, but I think it works with women as well, because there's some red flags with some women as well. And I think that we should be able to also talk to the men as well and be able to support them, because there are red flags that are going on with women and that men need to be educated on. And I think that is all of our responsibility. Yeah. And on that note, guys, as always, it was great catching up and talking on the IN2G Show, and I'm looking forward to the next time we meet up. Yes, we finished having those discussions. Thank you once again for being here and joining us. It was a great conversation. If you have any comments, anything that you want to talk about, please let us know. Speak to you soon.